Operation Anchorage has the player stepping into a simulation to fight the invading Red Chinese, while inside several new weapons become available, including the trench knife. In today's video, we'll be finding out if you can beat Fallout 3's Operation Anchorage using only the trench knife. Before we begin this post-war, pre-war simulation, it's time to lay down the rules. Firstly, I can only use the trench knife to kill enemies. Story-related deaths and enemies that die around me, whether it be through the means of other enemies or of their own folly, are fine. Secondly, the difficulty will begin at normal, but it can change depending on how I find things. So if the game is too easy, it will be increased, and if I find it absolutely impossible, it will be lowered. With that said, let's get into the challenge. This is one of those rare occasions where I decided to play as a male. I couldn't think of a reason for wanting the Black Widow perk, which is the only reason I choose the female option, so I went with the meat and two veg and got on with the tutorial. After demonstrating the incredible ability to bunny hop as a 1-year-old toddler, Dad thought I was possessed and put me in baby jail. He did say he'd be back shortly, but I didn't know how long shortly was, and baby jail was rather boring, so I broke out and read a book to pass the time. After he came back, we time traveled to my 10th birthday party, where people gave me presents, others tried to take them, and for some reason, someone thought it was a good idea to let the robot cut the cake with a circular saw. Why? I cried, and my punishment for doing so was killing my pet roach Rad the Rad Roach. I was heartbroken, and after 6 years of reliving it, I decided to take out my anger on those that made me do it. Dad, Jonas, Stanley, Andy, Butch, even Amata couldn't escape my fury. Don't worry, no one died. After choosing tag skills, I realized I could no longer attack, so I went to apologize to Dad. 3 years later, he still hadn't forgiven me. In fact, he had packed his things and left in the dead of night. I thought about going after him, then thought it would be much more fun to play a game inside a game, so I rounded up the relatives of Roach the Rad Roach, let them avenge their insect brother, and left the vault. Now that I was outside, I decided to help Megaton until I was at level 4. I disarmed the bomb, grabbed the bobblehead, repaired the pipes, and stole Jericho's comic book because I'm almost certain he can't read. I then helped Moira with the Wasteland Survival Guide, completing 2 chapters before I had what I wanted, which was enough experience points to reach level 4, so I could get the comprehension perk and read books for an extra skill point. It was a small improvement, but much like a grain of sand between your butt cheeks, it's noticeable, but you could live without it. Simply put, save your time for something more practical, like a double-ended pencil. After getting tagged by raiders and running away, I met Defender Moral, who provided safe passage to the VSS facility. Riding the vertical escalator downwards, I found the clubhouse, grabbed a body pillow, put on some PJs, and went to bed. There is a reason for bringing the Gary clone with me. I'm sure some of you know why. For those that don't, you soon will. Now inside the simulation, the first thing we have to do is find a trench knife, which involves the monumental task of opening up our Pip-Boy and selecting the weapon. With the hard part over, it's time to virtually win the war with nothing more than a digital knife and Benji's chiseled jaw, which really isn't that challenging. The only hard part is watching your health and making the most of the health dispensers, because unlike the other DLCs, where you can take enough stim packs to heal a giraffe with whiplash, Operation Anchorage says it's time to buck up and face the pain. After fighting through 20 or so Chinese soldiers, witnessing a war crime, and getting flexed on by Benji's athleticism, I increased the difficulty to very hard, and just in time to fight the Crimson Dragoons, the stealthiest soldiers the Red Army has to offer. Despite their stealth comparing to a one-legged fat man on skates, they were quite difficult to kill, mostly because they kept blocking, and while they did deal a good amount of damage, there was a nearby health dispenser that I could abuse. The rest of the facility was completely fine. Outside, I destroyed all 3 artillery guns with explosives, it's fine, circumcised a Chinese soldier, and returned to base where I received a promotion, but also I lost my trench knife. Speaking to Lieutenant Morgan, we learn that we get to use the requisition terminal to choose a gear package, but Fireteam, Close Assault, Sniper, and Heavy Weapons had no trench knife. The closest thing was the combat knife in the fireteam package. My mind went to a bad place. If I couldn't get a trench knife, then the run was over. But I did remember reading that in the Spanish version of the game, the trench knife had been mislabeled as a combat knife, and I was kind of hoping this was the same thing. To make things a little less worrisome, I was also allowed to pick 3 units of a strike team. The infantrymen and snipers both came with trench knives, so I went with 2 infantrymen and 1 sniper, and I knew I wouldn't be able to loot them if they died, because everything breaks apart into a blue cloud of pixels, but perhaps I could use my superior rank to request the knife, or if needs be, steal it. Outside I met the strike team and discovered they wouldn't give me the knife, and on top of that, only the sniper seemed to be carrying one, so I tried to take it, got caught, and instead of getting yelled at like you would expect, he tried to kill me, and the worst thing was, no one tried to stop him. It took many attempts to steal the knife. In the end it was possible, but the condition was terrible. Luckily my suspicions were correct, and the combat knife that came with the fireteam package was in fact a trench knife. Gracias. On the battlefield I didn't really encounter any problems. At first there seemed to be just the right amount of health dispensers, and the strike team was a large help. Don't worry, they're not always with me. As the enemy forces grew thin, I paid my respects to a fallen soldier. Who would be the one to tell his snow wife and his little snow children that their daddy, Sergeant Jack Frost, wouldn't be home for Christmas? Not me, that's for sure. Around the corner I rescued 2 real but also not real soldiers, fought these little crab mines that, like babies, are both adorable and repellent at the same time. As you can imagine, stabbing a knife into a live mine is not a good way of taking them out, so I let the strike team deal with those and saved my strength for the tank. Did I not mention that we had to kill a tank? Yeah, we do. As I turned the corner, the screw tank opened fire, almost giving me a heart attack, but I was determined to avenge Frosty, a soldier that in the heat of battle always kept a cool head. Getting closer, I went to attack and fell over. I got straight back up to try again. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but no, the tank definitely meant to do that. I ended up attacking using VATS, and after that, I found a sweet spot where I could attack without getting fired across the floor. I think it threw me back because it was moving, and not because the tank had some kind of special defense that I couldn't see. The tank went boom, so did the fuel tanks, I lost one of the infantrymen, and pretty soon I was back at HQ for the next mission. Back at base, 3 soldiers were slacking off taking pictures. This is the same pose you can find at the Anchorage Memorial, although the weapons are slightly different. I photobombed that shit, replaced the infantryman with a grenadier, and was pleasantly surprised to see a female soldier. Welcome aboard. At the mining town, McKinney took a bullet to the brain, I got wasted by a missile, and was quickly finished off by Chinese snipers. The next time I knew exactly where he was, I went straight for him. Although I did get hit by 2 missiles, I was surprisingly still alive, and by using VATS, I was able to kill the Chinese launcher without dying. Then I saw another one. I ran forward praying the Chinese soldier wanted to live even as half as much as I did. He must have, because he hesitated long enough for me to heal and went down fighting with his bare hands. Good man. It's quiet. Almost too quiet. If you look closely, you can see the outline of Chinese snipers perched in the most obvious positions imaginable. They may have superior stealth capabilities, but their common sense is as prevalent as an outdoor fart. It's there, but at the same time, it's almost impossible to pinpoint. Using VATS, I got up close to those that I could, and then I noticed that the grenadier was MIA. I think I could have called in a replacement for her, but I decided not to. Inside the listening post, my sniper had decided to stay outside. I guess he was keeping watch. Truth be told, the outside was already cleared. It was the inside that was the problem. More Crimson Dragoons, and this time they were an actual threat. After cutting through many of their numbers, my health was low and I was desperately searching for a health dispenser when I noticed more of them. I tried my best to take them out, but it wasn't enough. On the second attempt, I noticed there was a healing station, used it, and painted the room in commie blood. 2 definitely not hiding Chinese snipers later, I returned back to base for the final part of the mission. All that remained of my strike team was Benji and the OG sniper.
Alright, now it's just you and me. Let's go take down the pulse field.
Sergeant Montgomery wants to talk to you.
It was time to finally put the trench knife into action where it really belonged, in the trenches. As for the trenches, the biggest threat was the Chinese Inferno units. For some reason, fire hurts so much more than bullets. Luckily, their lives were pretty short, about as short as you could expect a giant fuel tank on legs to live amidst a war. Also, the heavies joined in, so there wasn't really much for us to do other than to progress the quest by skating over to the building on the far right and turning off the minefield so we can cross to the other side.
Look at all those chickens!
As soon as we enter into the Chinese compound, everyone starts fighting, and no one tries to rescue the hostage. General Jingwei started speaking Chinese. Let's not question why we understand him. I may be red on the inside, but I ain't no commie. Jingwei is kind of similar to the Legates and Colonel Autumn. While a peaceful solution can be reached via a speech check, he can't be convinced to fight you one-on-one. It's either everyone fights everyone, or no one fights at all. I tried fighting Jingwei and he tore me to pieces. His electric sword is shockingly powerful. After I died, the game loaded and he just stood there, oblivious to the conflict around him. This forced me to reload an earlier save and re-enter the base. I died 2 more times before I understood what needed to be done. Using Psycho to increase my damage and VATS to get close enough to attack him without getting hit back was the trick. Trust me, it's working. And then I did my best to avoid him until I could use VATS again. Eventually Jingwei grew tired and started attacking Benji instead, allowing me to stab him in the back and win the war. Moments later, I was being pulled out of the simulation, and this is where Gary's body comes into play. If you use the interact button as you're exiting the simulation, you can transfer your items outside of the simulation. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is doable. It might take a few attempts, but it can be done. My reason for doing so was to make sure I definitely had a trench knife for the final fight. That's right, we're not done. Outside the simulation, the armory opened up, and this is the entire reason the outcasts are even here. It really doesn't make any sense that the first thing they would do is give me free reign to take all the good stuff. Winterized power armor that doesn't even need training to wear, a Gauss rifle, even Jingwei's shock sword. The other outcasts are not happy with this, I don't blame them, I wouldn't be either, and a mutiny for leadership is soon underway. Keep in mind that you can help out, just be careful you don't hit either McGraw or Olin, because if you do, then you'll have to kill everyone, and I do mean everyone. With that incursion fully sought out, I left the VSS facility with some pretty good loot, and the run was officially complete. So to answer the question, can you beat Fallout 3's Operation Anchorage with a trench knife? Yes, you can. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.